and things that had gone wrong for Liz Truss within a couple of weeks, and it was damning, like the amount of areas that she said she's just not up to the job, and to then turn around and say, oh no, she didn't resign, I fired her, it just looks desperate and weak, and I don't see it carrying on much longer.
No, and I do just wonder, playing this out to its potential natural conclusion, Olivia, just to remind our viewers and our listeners of what we've got coming up in about an hour's time, actually, which I'm assuming we'll be taking quite a lot of now live here on GB News, which is this vote supposedly on fracking anyway in the House of Commons later on. It's not really on fracking. It's actually been made, bizarrely, by our own Prime Minister as a vote of confidence on her. That's at about 7 o'clock. Rumours of 39 MPs or so potentially going to vote against the government on that. Very quickly, Olivia, does Truss survive until morning?
Till morning, perhaps, but I wouldn't guarantee till tomorrow evening.
All right. Look, both of you, thank you very much. Olivia Rutley, especially great to have you on the show, and our political reporter there, who had a much busier day than you were initially anticipating, it's fair to say. Benjamin Lockney from the Bow Group, thank you very much. Right, people, whew, I need a coffee, I think. Coming up, more reaction to the news as Suella Braverman has resigned as Home Secretary. That's with Michelle Dewberry with Dewbs and Co. coming your way right now. Don't go anywhere. Before that, it's your weather. It's raining over Downing Street.
Hello, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Tomorrow we'll see a bit of a switch around compared to today, with the wettest weather in the east, some welcome rain here, much brighter conditions further west. It is going to stay mild, however, and tomorrow won't be as windy as today. Low pressure dominating to the southwest, the isobars squeezing together, very blustery through this evening over parts of North and West Wales especially, but right across the west, gusty winds, some heavy rain for Northern Ireland through the day today. That'll ease maybe for a time, but then further pulses of heavy rain will move in overnight. We'll see some heavy showers for southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales. Further south, generally turning dry. Going to be a mild night, temperatures staying in double digits for many, maybe even into the teens in the capital. And that means it's going to be quite misty and murky as well, with a lot of low cloud around. So a fairly glum start to Thursday. There'll be wet weather across Scotland. That'll slowly push to the north. And then outbreaks of rain likely across southeast England and East Anglia. Some heavy rain likely here. Parts of the Midlands seeing a bit of that rain too. But notice most of the rain is going to be in the east compared to today. A much brighter day for Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England with some sunny spells. Pretty mild again in the south, 18, 19 Celsius. It'll feel quite cool if you're stuck under this cloud and rain on the east coast, which will linger through the afternoon and perhaps spiral back into parts of eastern Scotland as we go through Thursday night. A drier slot before then more bands of rain come up from the southwest, and the winds start to strengthen as well, because the winds will be lighter on Thursday but pick up again on Friday with further bands of showers coming in from the southwest. Quite a wet day again for Wales and southwest England, and those bands of rain moving northwards into parts of the Midlands, northern England, maybe Northern Ireland late in the day. So chopping and changing the weather a fair bit. That continues into the weekend. A mixture of sunshine and showers, some heavy showers on Sunday, but right the way throughout it'll stay mild.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m. where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, hello there. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking today. Now, I'm sure you might have realised by now that after just 43 days, we have ourselves a new Home Secretary. Suella Braverman is gone. In her place, Grant Shapps. Are you keeping up with all these changes? I want to know all of your thoughts on that. There's a vote tonight on fracking, tabled, of course, by Labour. Some people saying it's basically an unofficial vote of no confidence in the government. Is it? Where do you stand on all of this? Has Liz Truss still got the credibility to maintain her position as the Prime Minister of this country? Where do you stand basically on Labour and Tory? Is it time now for proportional representation? Are you someone at home that's sitting there thinking, I am no longer represented at all? Tell me all of your thoughts on that. I'll be getting into it with political editor Nigel Nelson and the leader of the Heritage Party, David Careton. But first, let's bring ourselves up to speed on what else has been going on.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, it's been a busy afternoon in politics, as I've no doubt been hearing. It's been confirmed in the last hour or so that Suella Braverman has resigned as Home Secretary, and within the last 2 minutes, we're hearing from the office of the UK Prime Minister on Twitter and other social media outlets that the Right Honourable Grant Shapps MP has been appointed Secretary of State for the Home Department. So Grant Shapps, the former Transport Secretary, is now confirmed by Downing Street as the Home Secretary, replacing Suella Braverman, who, if you're watching on television, you can see in those pictures. In a strongly worded resignation letter, Suella Braverman said she was resigning due to a mistake she'd made earlier today when she sent an official document on migration policy from her personal email, which she admitted broke the ministerial code. But in an openly critical paragraph in her resignation letter, she said about the Prime Minister she had serious concerns about the government's commitment to honouring manifesto commitments, such as reducing overall migration numbers and stopping illegal migration, particularly the dangerous small boat crossings, an issue we've covered widely here on GB News. Well, in response, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, said she accepted the resignation, adding it was important the ministerial code was upheld and that cabinet confidentiality must be respected. So, just to underline for you then, within the last 2 minutes from Downing Street, the former Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, who was seen, by the way, entering Downing Street about half an hour ago, is now the new Home Secretary, and he has been appointed as Miss Braverman's replacement. Well, it was a busy afternoon in the House of Commons as well today. The Prime Minister told the Commons she was still completely committed to the triple lock on pensions. Liz Truss faced jeers from opposition MPs during Prime Minister's questions, as she said she was on the side of working people and she promised to protect the most vulnerable. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, urged her to stand down, asking what was the point of a Prime Minister whose promises didn't even last a week.
The only mandate she's ever had is from members opposite. It was a mandate built on fantasy economics and it ended in disaster. The country's got nothing to show for it except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party. I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone.
I have been very clear that Mr. Speaker, that I am sorry and that I have made mistakes. But the right thing to do in those circumstances is to make changes, which I've made, and to get on with the job and deliver for the British people. And Mr. Speaker, we've delivered the energy price guarantee, we've helped people this winter, and I will continue to do that.
Well, there'll be full coverage and analysis of the musical chairs, if you will, in Westminster during Michelle Dewbs' programme next. But in the meantime, let's get on with other news today. And the deaths of 45 newborn babies could have been prevented, according to an inquiry which found serious failings at one of England's largest NHS trusts. After reviewing more than 200 cases dating back to 2009, experts concluded that poor care at East Kent Hospital's NHS trust contributed to the babies' deaths. Some newborns were left with brain damage. The inquiry chairman, Dr. Bill Kirkup, says the panel heard distressing accounts from families where mothers were ignored by staff or had their concerns overlooked.
What has happened in East Kent is deplorable and harrowing. We have numerous instances of care that was not given to the right standards, consistently failed to meet standards, with deaths and significant harm in scores of families. We had 202 families that came forward. In 97, deaths, injuries or other harm could have been different if care had been given to the standards accepted nationally.
Well, one mother, Danielle Clark, says her son, who was born at QEQM Hospital in Margate in 2013, had to be sent to London for life-saving surgery, and she faced more issues giving birth to her third child last year.
When I look back, we just kept being told that we were first-time parents, we were anxious, but that wasn't the case. There was seriously things wrong. I've just had another child last year, so like within an 8-year period, and things are still so terribly bad.
Well, in response, the chief executive of East Kent Hospitals, Tracy Fletcher, admitted mistakes had been made, and she apologised to the families affected.
I want to say sorry and apologise unreservedly for the harm and suffering that has been experienced by the women and babies who were within our care, together with their families, and as described in today's report. These families came to us expecting that we would care for them safely, and we failed them. We must now learn from and act on this report.
Charities are calling for benefits to be raised in line with inflation, which has returned to a 40-year high. Office for National Statistics figures show inflation rose to 10.1% in September. That's up from 9.9% on the previous month. Higher food prices were responsible for the increase. And lastly, the Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been granted bail. The 21-year-old is facing charges of attempted rape, assault and controlling and coercive behaviour. His release comes just 2 days after he was remanded in custody. All 3 charges relate to the same woman. You are up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. With GB News, where now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, what can I say, everybody? It's a big day, a big night in politics again today. Liz Truss must be sitting there just doing what? What do you think she is sitting there doing right now, banging her head against the wall whilst drinking, I would say, triple gin and tonic is what I would be doing if I was in her shoes tonight. What can we say? Suella Braverman out, Grant Shapps in. Questions I've got for you tonight. Jeremy Hunt, is it him running the country? Is it the end of Brexit? Is it a coup? Is it time for PR? And does Liz Truss still have a mandate? Should she remain our Prime Minister? That's what I want to get into tonight. And keeping me company, I've got a great panel for it. It's got the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, and David Cairton as well, the leader of the Heritage Party. And you know the drill, don't you, by now? It's not just us three nattering away to each other. It's you at home as well. You are very important to this conversation. So tell me, what are you thinking tonight? Get in touch. You can tweet me at GB News or at Michelle Dewbs, or you can email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk. As always, is my email address. Many of you in touch already. Emma says, bring back Boris. Do you think that that would be the answer to all of these woes? Do you think he'd be able to get a hold of everything and steady the ship? Adrian says, this is all down to Hunt. He is pulling the strings. Do you share that perspective? Christine says, I am well, I can't use that word at tea time, but you're angry is what you say right now, Christine. You're another one that thinks we should bring back Boris. David says, the worst of the Tories, though, Michelle, is still head and shoulders above the best of Labour. Enrico says, it is time for a general elections. We must get the Conservatives out. And you say that you're a member and even you want them out. Goodness me. Tell me your thoughts on all of that. As we've just been hearing, though, we all know by now Suella Braverman is out. I'm also interested when it comes to this, by the way. There's lots of angles that we could take this. But I'm also pondering tonight, what does this mean for migration? I've got a great letter to read for you, which is her resignation. What do you call it? Resignation. Some people say she didn't resign at all. But joining me, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. I think he's with us right now. Darren? Good evening. Goodness me, it's dark where you are, Darren.
Michelle, another dramatic day here in Westminster. Grant Shapps has just left Downing Street, the new Home Secretary. The third one we've had in a matter of months as he takes over at the Home Office following the resignation of Suella Braverman in a brutal resignation letter to the Prime Minister this afternoon. Now, the reason officially she resigned today is, it seems, a lapse of security, the sharing of an email with someone else, with another MP, that she shouldn't have done, though given the fact that Priti Patel broke the ministerial code a couple of years ago and stayed in post, many suspect that should not have been a resigning issue. It seems that the real reason was a gulf of difference when it comes to this issue of immigration, with the government looking to relax the rules effectively on legal migration into the UK, liberalising those rules to try and hope to boost the economy, something Suella Braverman did not like. She saw it as a betrayal of the manifesto commitments made in 2019, a betrayal effectively of Brexit, and she said of the government that it was pretending that it made mistakes, carrying on as if everyone can see that they have made them and hoping that things will magically come right, arguing that is not serious politics. So, as I say, a pretty brutal, pretty punchy resignation letter from her. Could she be a leadership contender in the future? And all this, of course, while the government struggles on tonight and the next hour, Michelle, respecting what is effectively a confidence vote in the government on fracking. We've already heard from quite a few Conservative MPs who said they're willing to defy the government and vote against them tonight, meaning they could lose the whip. And this is the big problem for Liz Truss, isn't it? She is trying to grapple with one fire after another, with all these suggestions that effectively she's not in charge, but Jeremy Hunt, our Chancellor, is, who's in Parliament behind me talking to MPs. And this isn't the end of it. This isn't the problem. This is a big policy difference between her former Home Secretary and herself on immigration. But she's got a ton more down the road on benefits, whether they should be linked to earnings or to inflation, on other issues such as defence spending. There are so many big, eye-watering decisions, as Jeremy Hunt said, that the government's going to have to make in the weeks to come. And we're going to see these confrontations, potentially these resignations, to the point where many Conservative MPs, and it's begun tonight yet again, are questioning, can this continue? Can this chaos at the heart of government carry on? And there'll be many of them thinking that maybe the end is a lot closer than we thought even just a matter of hours ago.
Goodness me, Darren McCaffrey, what a mess. What a mess. I'll leave you for now. Nigel Nelson. You know, honestly, I bet Liz Truss must be sitting there going, what have I done? Why did I even put myself up for this?
Well, also there is a human element. I mean, it must be agony for her to get to a point where everything has been ripped apart and it's just one thing after the other. This often happens in politics, that as soon as one thing goes wrong, it's like dominoes falling, everything else goes wrong. And so what's just happened could have actually happened to anybody, that Suella Braverman made an error. It was a breach of the ministerial code. She's absolutely right. She should resign for doing that.
But honest mistake, though.
Honest mistake. But I mean, the whole thing is that it's a mistake that any minister would have gone for. When you join government, whether you're the Prime Minister or you're a civil service official, they give you your iPhone, which is a secure iPhone. They give you your laptop, and all government business must be conducted on those two machines and using official emails. She breached that, and as a result of that, she would go. Any minister would have gone for that. What is astonishing is the sting in the tail that she adds to her resignation letter, where she says, look, this government actually is pretty useless. That's the paraphrase. We know they've had rows about immigration, that Liz Truss wanted to get high-skilled people into the country. Suella Braverman was against that. But what this shows is, as you pointed out, a government in chaos. We're being governed by headless chickens.
Do you share that view? We're being governed by headless chickens?
Well, this current administration under Liz Truss really does look like it. It's an administration in chaos. I mean, it's only 5 days since Kwasi Kwarteng went, and now we've got Suella Braverman gone as well. And it doesn't look like there was any real need for her to go. I know you say she broke the ministerial code, but I think people have stayed in position for doing far worse than that. I mean, when Boris Johnson went, obviously, there was the whole Partygate scandal, and there were all kinds of people who actually broke the law and were given fines for breaking the laws that they put in place with lockdowns and so on. But they got to stay in their position. So, I mean, this seems like a very small thing. But it looks like what's behind this is a big argument over policy. And Suella Braverman was on the side of what the majority of people want. We want controls on our borders, controls on immigration, to stop the boats coming across from France and just being allowed free passage here. And it seems like Liz Truss had the opposite opinion for whatever reason.
Yeah, you're quite right. So in one of the final paragraphs of that resignation letter from Suella Braverman, she says, and I quote, I've had serious concerns about this government's commitment to honouring manifesto commitments such as reducing overall migration numbers and stopping illegal migration, particularly, she says, the dangerous small boat crossings. We might remember, Nigel, she was saying the other day that it was her dream that there was front page headlines with pictures of planes to Rwanda.
Yeah, well, we haven't actually got a single plane off to Rwanda yet.
We've got one off to Albania, though, haven't we?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that happens all the time, that we send Albanians home constantly. And if you wanted to deal with Albanians, one of the best ways of doing that would be to take your asylum applications away from Britain. People have to apply for asylum when they reach in this country, and ask them to apply elsewhere. Well, Albanians would never get any chance of getting a visa or something like that. So that would work. We haven't seen her deal with boat crossings. We don't know quite what her plans were. She wasn't in place long enough to know how she would deal with that. And it seems to me it's absolutely right. That's what our target should be. How do we disrupt the people smugglers? How do we stop people coming across? But we also need certain people in this country to fill vacancies in things like social care. We could do with high-skilled people to get growth targets that Liz Truss talks about. So that part is right. Immigration is a huge, complicated thing, and it's not all of it is bad.
All right, Nigel, fascinating, but shush, one sec. Grant Shapps is speaking Home Secretary to him now.
But I think the most important thing is to make sure that people in this country know that they've got security. And that's why it's a great honour to be appointed as Home Secretary today. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into the role and providing the sort of security that the British people need, regardless of what's happening otherwise in Westminster. So I'm looking forward to getting on with the job, and thank you for coming out this evening.
Mr. Braverman says the government's broken key pledges, has it, particularly on migration?
Well, you'll forgive me, I'm literally 10 minutes into the job, so I'll refrain for commenting on the specifics of this role for the second. But I mean, look, I accept that the government has obviously had a very difficult period, as Jeremy Hunt said when he was appointed on Friday. That nonetheless means it's doubly important to ensure that we are doing absolutely everything in the basic areas. Jeremy Hunt, I think, has done a great job of settling the issues relating to that mini-budget. I want to be here at the Home Office doing, I think, one of the most important roles in government and making sure that people feel secure and protected.
She also says it's important to own up to mistakes, implying that the Prime Minister hasn't owned up to mistakes and resigned.
Well, look, you're probably at an advantage. I haven't had a chance to catch up with everything that the previous Home Secretary was saying. What I do know is there's a very important job to do. People people expect their government to ensure there is security for them. The Home Office is at the heart of that in so many different ways. It's a great office of state. I'm obviously honoured to do that role, and I'm going to get on with that serious role right now.
But you've been very critical. Why are you now joining?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You are. Thanks very much.
Terry, saying how excited he is to take this new role on. Apparently, he hadn't had a chance to read Suella's letter, which I found a bit weird, by the way. It wouldn't have taken that long. But anyway, what do you make to all that?
I'm not particularly excited about him being Home Secretary. I'd rather Suella Braverman stayed there, because she seems to be one of the only people in the Conservative government who's actually conservative and wanted to reduce immigration. I mean, he didn't mention immigration at all there, but he mentioned security. Security about 4 times there. Well, if that means the police are empowered to do their proper job and catch real criminals and stop engaging in all this wokery, which was something else that Suella Braverman said in her speech at the Conservative conference, that's great. But I wonder what he actually means by that, and, you know, how that's going to flesh out when he gets into the job. But really, he does need to get a grip of immigration and the boats coming across the channel, because that is a huge issue. And if he's talking about security, we have a lot of military-age men from Albania, from other places, some with criminal records, coming into this country by their hundreds or thousands every day. We need to stop the boats coming and basically tow them back to France. I would say the Rwanda scheme that everyone in the Conservative government is pushing is not going to do anything. We haven't had a single flight to Rwanda, and it's not actually a deportation scheme. It's an exchange scheme. It's a one in, one out. We fly some people to Rwanda, and some people get flown back to Rwanda, so we don't actually have a net decrease in migration. We need to push the boats back to France. France won't be happy.
But they're not going to do it. But David, they're not going to do it. And no matter who it is.
Well, I would do it. If I was in government.
But hang on, let me get this straight then, because you say you would do it, and I sit here every day, by the way, and say they should do it as well. But the reason they're not doing it is because of technicalities of the law. So if you was in charge, you're saying you would do it, leader of the Heritage Party, say if the Heritage Party was running the country, what would you do then about the laws that seem to be restricting the people from doing it now? Well, there's certain things that we need to come out of immediately. We need to come out of the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, which the human rights lawyers always use to try to, you know, sue the government, stop the government from doing these kind of things. We also need to come out of the UN Migration Compact, the Barcelona Declaration, the Marrakesh Declaration, which are these international agreements to make migration regularised. And then, you know, basically we need to say any boats coming across, we don't help them for a start, because what's happening is the Border Force and the RNLI, just a second, the Border Force, the RNLI, are actually going out to meet boats in the middle of the channel, some of them being escorted by the French Navy. And this is, you know, what's been reported by citizen journalists like Steve Laws, an active patriot, and so on. We see this happening. We see the sort of satellite route maps of the French Navy escorting the boats. That needs to stop, and then the Navy, the British Navy, needs to stop them, and the British Border Force needs to stop escorting them to Dover and escort them back to the beaches in France. Nigel?
Well, you can't do that because of international law, as you made clear. I mean, I'm not quite sure. The first priority must be that we don't want people to go and drown in the English Channel, mustn't it? And so I'm not quite sure how else you actually do it. That the point basically is not so much to intercept them when they've set off, is to stop them setting off in the first place. And that seems to me the most important thing to do, to actually deal with the people smuggling gangs. As I say, to
but it's
actually
not
offer...
working, though, is it?
Well, some of it's working. I think that we need to redouble our efforts. We also need to get on better with the French, and the French need to be a bit more cooperative about doing these things.
But how much better can we get on with the French? We get on with them so well that they're taking tens of millions of pounds from us in order to apparently try and stop this.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? They don't seem to have actually taken on board the seriousness of it and dealt with it enough in their own country, and going around puncturing a few boats isn't actually going to help matters. And again, also to take away the lure of coming across the channel, which is my point about if you're a genuine asylum seeker, you're fleeing Afghanistan or Iran or somewhere where you're being persecuted, you apply for asylum somewhere different, not back in Britain.
Well, look, I mean, I don't totally disagree with you there, but there's three things. I mean, one is stopping them actually getting on the boats in France, absolutely. We've given France £55 million, but they're not doing anything with it. So that's money down the drain, basically. They're not keeping their end of the bargain. The next thing is, when they actually are in the Channel, not allowing them to come into British waters and land at Dover, which means we need to tow them back to France. One second. The third thing, if I just say the third thing first, is to not have the pull factors. So you have migrants coming to this country and they end up in a 4-star hotel and they get a house to themselves and they get benefits and they get a card, an Aspen card, which has got £175 of spending money on it each week. So, of course, it's a draw for people. If I were in that situation, I would try to come here as well, because there's a great package for you if you get here. We need to end that package so that people aren't tempted to come here. That's part of it, but also stop them getting on the boats and push the boats back when they're in the Channel.
What does that mean, push the boats back? I don't understand.
The Royal Navy can get a towing hook and then tow them back into the beaches in France.
Like what they used to do in Australia as part of Operation Sovereign Borders.
Yeah,
quite simple.
I mean, I just think there's a lot of dangers there. Obviously, you can't tow them back into French waters, having been in British waters, because that would be a breach of the law. But the idea of actually trying to tow overcrowded boats backwards towards the French coast seems to me highly dangerous. And the first thing must be protection of life.
The thing is, if you tow a few of them back, then they will stop coming, because the moment all the people wanting to come across the Channel realise we're serious about stopping boats coming, you get into a boat, you're going to be met by the British Navy and you're going to be towed back to France. It will stop the problem, because people will realise they won't be allowed to get across the Channel. We've got to do something, and that's the way to deal with it. French might not like it, they probably won't. They'll be grumpy for a couple of weeks, they might kick up a fuss, but that will stop the problem.
Well, they won't accept it.
Nigel doesn't sound convinced.
Well,
What do
any
you
more
guys?
than we would accept it. Well, I mean, how would we feel if the thing was in reverse?
It's
and the
not.
French Navy was coming out, was doing the same thing to Britain. So basically, they were leaving Britain to go to Calais, and the French Navy came along and sort of brought them back to Britain. We wouldn't like that either. So that's why I don't think that's very practical. You need a more practical way of discouraging them from doing it in the first place.
But that is not the situation. I mean, there's no one going the other way. It's all one-way traffic. So that's the problem we have to solve.
That's why the French will object. I'm making the point.
Well, I'm sure they would object, but they should. But they're not.
If it was us and the French Navy was then dumping people on our shores, we wouldn't be at all pleased about that anyway.
Oh, I wouldn't be pleased about that, no, but that's not the problem. The problem is the other way, and that's what we have to deal with now. We're giving the French £55 million, that's just this year, on top of tens of millions before, and they're not stopping the problem. So we're giving all this money, they're not doing anything with it properly, they're not actually solving the problem, so we have to step in and do something. We certainly shouldn't be sending the British Navy out to meet boats in the middle of the Channel and escort them back to Dover, at least.
Wow, what do you think? Two very different opinions there. Where do you sit about what is the answer to try and stop these boat crossings? I've got to say, we talk about pull factors. By my reckoning, I know we're probably inching away to 4-star hotels. At this rate, we'll be up to 5-star hotels soon. I think 30-odd thousand is the number of people making that crossing so far this year. Are you sitting there at home thinking, yes, we've got our answer, Grant Shapps is the man to finally get a hold of this? Both of my panel are laughing, so I'm assuming that they don't think that he is. But tell me, do you think that the new Home Secretary, Grant Shapps, is the man for the job? Is he finally going to get to grips with the Channel crossings? And if so, tell me how. GBViews at gbnews.uk is my email address. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to be sharing some of your thoughts on all of that and continuing the conversation about the absolute mess. I'd use a different word if I wasn't on telly, but the absolute mess that our politics are currently in. Don't go anywhere, and I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, with you until 7 o'clock tonight and keeping me company. Here in the studio we have the political editor for the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, and David Kertzen, who's the leader of the Heritage Party. And what a busy day, ladies and gentlemen, it is for politics. We're getting into all of this, a change of the Home Secretary. I want to address some of the suggestions that are lurking at the moment, whether or not this is a coup, whether or not this is potentially the end of Brexit, whether or not it's actually Jeremy Hunt that's leading this country after all. And what about proportional representation as well? Are you sick to the back teeth, quite frankly, of both Labour and the Tories right now, and you want a different choice? Yes, you get a different choice, but let's face it, with first past the post, it doesn't really make much of an impact, does it? So is it time for the whole system, quite frankly, to change? I want all your thoughts on that. Keith says basically millions of voters are now politically homeless. I completely agree with you there, Keith. Ian says Jeremy Hunt is basically trying to reverse Brexit before our very eyes. You're saying he's arrogant and it's unforgivable. Not mincing your words there. Andy says the Conservative Party is dead. They have now finally pressed the self-destruct button. Do you think that? Do you think that is the end of the Conservative Party? Leslie says, I don't think that Jeremy is in charge, but I do think this is all an attempted coup by the Remainers. Many of you saying it is time for a general election. But how will that fix things? Who do you think could get elected? Because we would still have this first past the post system, wouldn't we? Just tell me all your thoughts tonight. Nigel Nelson, we talk a lot, don't we, about, you know, the chaos. We're lurching from one crisis to another crisis. I'm going to be really blunt. I blame your lot for much of what's going wrong.
My lot in what sense? Which particular lot that I belong to?
What I mean by that is the political journalists in this country. I think that you, not you personally, I'm talking about the collective, I think you're constantly whipping up a frenzy. You're constantly just kind of second-guess everything. I think many people are trying to further their own agendas within the media, and I don't think it's in the best interest of this country. The words, if you look at like the front pages and the speculation and the, I won't say the word bullying because it's all a little bit, you know, that's a bit of a strange territory to get into. But, you know, you see these headlines, it's like Liz Truss has got, you know, 10 days, and I find it all a bit much.
That's what Grant Shapps said, by the way, and the new Home Secretary.
Yeah, but I just find it all a bit much, and I do think that the political journalists have got a lot to answer for. What would you say to that?
I'd say that we're there to report.
But you don't just report, you sensationalise it.
And we don't report. We do report in a partisan way. That's absolutely true. Fortunately, there is a wide spectrum of newspapers. Very few of them on the left wing, but an awful lot of Tory papers out there. Same thing goes for websites. So what we're trying to do as political journalists is tell readers what is really going on. Now, we don't always get that right. But if you just went on the statements that the politicians put out, you wouldn't have a clue about what was going on. I mean, you know, James Cleverly, I think, was on GB News fairly recently talking about no U-turn as far as the triple lock on pensions was going, while Liz Truss was there in the chamber turning around and saying, yep, we're going to keep the triple lock. So I think that you need a certain amount of interpretation about what's going on. And you're right, we don't always get it right. I do appreciate that. We just do the best with what we've got to work with. But we are the messenger. Those guys are the message.
So you're the messenger, and you think you're responsible in your message delivery?
I seriously try to be. That doesn't
not you, by the way. I'm talking about that. I don't want to. I'm not.
I was thinking I was a generic kind of political journalist here for these purposes.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you, and not. I don't necessarily mean you. I mean the collective, just the political journalists, because most people, you know, they're not politicos. They're not into all of this kind of. They don't live their life based on, you know, cabinet reshuffles and all the rest of it. They're just normal people. They just want the best for their lives, their family. They want to get a job and, you know, have enough money to get by and all the rest of it. And sometimes I think that lots of the complications in society are created unnecessarily by journalists looking to, I don't know, push their agendas, sell their publication. Maybe I'm just being a bit harsh.
Well, I mean, certainly, obviously, it's business, so you're right about selling publications. But the idea is we're trying to tell people what all this means and what it means to them. So what it means to their mortgages, to the prices they're going to pay in supermarkets. We do try as much as possible to bring it down to what ordinary people are going through. And we try to get it right. That's all I can say, really.
David, where do you stand?
It's no surprise to me that this has happened because the Conservative Party is not Conservative as far as I'm concerned. It's got the name, but it shouldn't have the name. You should take them to the Trades Description Act and Tribunal, to be honest, because whenever they get a new leader or whenever there's an election, they try to sound like Conservative. They say, we're going to do Conservative things. We're going to cut immigration. We're going to be financially responsible. We're going to fight wokery. We're going to be proud of our nation, etc. All of these great things. And you think, yeah, that's wonderful. But as soon as they get in, they change, they do a bait and switch, and they do the exact opposite of all the great Conservative things that they said they were going to do. And it's the same with Liz Truss. I mean, she was like, yeah, appointed Suella Braverman to cut immigration, to fight wokery in the police force. I mean, she wanted to have growth, you know, economic growth and so on. That's great. Cut taxes and so on. Within a few weeks, she's ditched all of that and done a massive U-turn on everything. I mean, it's no different to Boris Johnson, Theresa May, David Cameron on the things they promised. They U-turned on those things too.
Yeah, speaking about U-turns, fracking. So tonight, I think it's about 7 o'clock, is it? There's,
7 o'clock vote.
Yeah, there's a vote at 7 o'clock about whether or not fracking should be banned. It's been pushed by the Labour Party.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are saying, basically, it's an unofficial vote of confidence or no confidence in the government. Tories have been three-line whipped. They've got to vote against this. Some of them are already coming out and saying that they're not going to vote against this. I don't know if that means they're going to abstain or what they're going to do. But do you see this tonight as a vote of no confidence or whatever in the government?
Well, I'm astonished that the Tory party has made it a vote of confidence. I mean, technically, if Liz Truss was to lose that vote tonight, the government falls. She's made that.
Why?
Because that would show if she's made it a vote of confidence and she loses that vote, that means Parliament doesn't have confidence in her and her government.
But she's already said if she loses that vote, she's not going anywhere.
No, I appreciate that. But I mean, technically, that's what it means if you make it a confidence vote. She could, of course, then just take the whip away from all the MPs who vote against her.
And the indication is that that's what would happen, isn't it?
Well, if that happens, then the chances are her government would fall again, because on the basis that it only needs now 40 Conservative MPs to vote against the government, and the government can't get any legislation through. So I found that a really odd way of actually operating this afternoon, to turn it into a confidence vote. That a lot of Tory MPs don't like fracking. A lot do. She may well carry the vote, but it just seemed a strange way of playing parliamentary games that could actually rebound on her.
Yeah, and I think this is the point I was just trying to make. I just feel disheartened because I do think that too many people are playing, I'll quote your phrase there, political games. You know, and this is real life. There's a lot of people at home that are not politicos. They're not into all this. A lot of people, quite frankly, probably won't even vote at the next general election. And I feel like they have been having done to them such a disservice by politicking. Is that the right word? Politicking. I just think it's wrong. It sits so uncomfortably with me. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they don't seem to have any fundamental principles or fundamental agreement on so many of these things. I mean, fracking is something you'd think, well, you know, we want an agreement on this. It's an important issue. What are we going to do about our energy sources, our energy infrastructure? You would think, you know, if you're in the Conservative Party, you want to, develop our onshore gas resources and actually bring prices down. But then the fact there's such a rebellion on this issue, which should be obvious to all of them, it's crazy. This is just one issue out of many, many things. But, I mean, I don't see that this should be a confidence vote. There's no reason for it to be a confidence vote. But if they've made it a three-line whip, well, what you would have to do then is say, well, anyone who votes against this, you lose the whip. I mean, that would be the normal penalty for voting against the government.
So what if they didn't vote against it, they just abstained? What then?
I think
technically they could have the whip taken away,
Yeah.
but they may not actually do that. It's in the gift of the whips, the kind of punishment that they dish out.
Goodness me, what a mess. Are you keeping up with all this, everyone? Let me know. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want your thoughts. And I want to ask you the question as well. Is it time for proportional representation? I suspect at least one of my panel tonight may say yes. Anyway, don't go away. I'll see you in a second.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock tonight. And in the studio with me, we have the political editor for the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, and David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party. Mike, you've emailed in and you're saying, Michelle, you're asking us, viewers, for our opinions on the situation. Why, he says, what difference does it make? The electorate expressed its view once in a referendum and once in a general election. Again, those views were clear and precise precise and clearly communicated. Nothing was respected, you say. I hear you, Mike. Which leads me nicely, Mike, so you do, into my next question. Is it time for proportional representation? Something tells me that this young man to my right, David Curtin of the Heritage Party, will say yes.
Well, I'm glad you called me a young man, thank you, but absolutely, yes, absolutely. It's time for proportional representation. The thing with the first past the post system is it's out of date. It works very well if you only have two parties or two candidates standing in a seat. But, you know, we have 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates now in every seat in a general election. And that means that most people who vote for most candidates don't get any representation whatsoever. And then people tend to vote tactically but negatively. They vote for somebody to keep out who they don't want. So people vote more to keep someone out rather than for voting who they really, really want. You know, so a lot of people would vote for someone like me in the Heritage Party and our candidates, maybe. But they don't get, you know, they might not do that because they think, oh, well, we've got to vote Tory to keep out Labour because if we don't do that, it's going to be worse. I mean, I would say that there isn't really much difference today between Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green. They're all sort of following the same agenda. But proportional representation would actually give a chance for people to vote positively and get representation, and every vote would count in that case, rather than only, say, 40, 50% of votes.
So a big fat yes coming from David. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I sympathise with David.
Do you?
Yeah, I do actually, yeah. Because
you surprised me. I thought you was going to say no to that.
Well, I said I sympathise. I didn't say I'd say yes to
right.
it. On the basis that quite clearly proportional representation is proper democracy. You're absolutely right that we don't have proper democracy in this country under the first past the post system. Probably general elections are decided by a few 100,000 votes at the end of the day. The problem comes down to whether or not you want a government or not to actually work properly. Israel has the most pure form of PR and constantly changing governments. So if, for instance, we'd had PR in 2015, UKIP would probably have got about 80 MPs. Now, UKIP were not a party of government. Even Nigel Farage would admit that they were not geared up to be a party of government. The last new party of government I saw was the SDP, and that was 40 years ago. They certainly might have been able to form a government. I've not seen anything since. So the danger is you will paralyse the business of government and governance if you don't have the two-party system.
But look at the system, look at the state of the system, should I say. Look at the state of politics as it is now.
Well, I mean,
and that's with an 80-seat majority.
And then it goes wrong. I was quite a fan of the Tory Lib Dem coalition. I thought that worked much better than most of us thought it would. That was without PR, where the Libs were able to actually put a brake on some of the more extreme things the Tories might have done. So I'm not against these kind of things happening. I just think that if you get pure PR into this country, we will never be able to govern properly.
So you want it, but what do you think is the realistic possibility of it coming to be?
Well, I mean, Labour now have said that they support PR. I mean, that's because it will benefit them.
Not
and
quite.
They would think that they... Well, I mean, the thing is, if they do...
The conference passed a vote
OK, right. Which means, you know, hopefully then their NEC would take it on as a policy and then they might implement that. So we'll see what happens. But, you know, I certainly think that's something that we should have. We'll see. I mean, obviously, the Tories will never go for PR because they think that the first past the post system suits them and benefits them, which it does. You know, they've got well over 50% of the MPs, but they haven't got, they had 40% of the votes. So they have got a disproportionately big number of MPs. All the other parties have got fewer than they should have under PR. So it's very interesting that Labour are now making signs that they might change their policy and bring it in. And if they do, well, you know, I think that was only good for democracy. I wouldn't want a Labour government, by the way, I'm not saying that, but it will be good because smaller parties like mine were small at the moment, but I think we are a genuinely conservative party and we do want to be a party of government, and I think we do a better job than this shower that we've got in at the moment that are, you know, in absolute chaos, you know, so let's give other parties a chance.
Indeed. I would say yes, indeed, to PR. Lots of you guys as well, you're saying yes to PR as well. Carol says anyone that would say no to PR because apparently it would create chaos in government just needs to look at what we've got right now. I completely hear you there. Who's this? Helen says, no, definitely not about proportional representation. You say just keep it simple. Again, this is a textbook example. I suspect people may look back and study this period within our parliament because it is a fascinating time, isn't it? We're saying keep it simple, but simple's not working, is it? I mean, look at where we are now. Dave says, yes, from me, we definitely need to get away from the Tory and Labour parties causing perpetual turmoil for the UK. Michelle, as Mark Twain once said, if voting made any real difference, they wouldn't let you do it. There you go. Yes, it's paralysed now, so PR. Yeah, you see, I have to say, I do think you are a little bit split. Dave says, PR is long overdue, but the last time we had a vote, the public was too stupid to understand it. I think that's a little bit harsh, Dave. I think actually what happened is you had that vote, and then we had the election that you mentioned, where UKIP got all the votes, and I think it was one seat, and even then, wasn't that Douglas Carswell, who then defected and got that seat? So actually, I don't think it was that they were too stupid to understand. I think there'd never really been a proper example.
Well, it was in 2011, the referendum on alternative voting, and 7 out of 10 people voted against it. So there wasn't a great appetite in this country for PR.
But that wasn't proper PR, was it, as such? It was
well, I mean, we don't want to argue over which form of PR we actually bring in.
That would be the next argument.
It was the last time we've had a proper vote on the principle of PR, anyway.
Chris says, no, Michelle, it's not time for proportional representation. It's simply time for a new party. Chris, new parties are popping up all over the place. At least I feel like that. Anyway, right, very quick question to you both, because look at the time, it's flying by. Liz Truss, will she be the Prime Minister the next time I see you?
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. Why? When you next planning on seeing me?
That's a good question.
Yeah, OK.
If I see you next week, highly unlikely.
I'll simplify the question. By this time next week, will Liz Truss be our Prime Minister?
I think it's unlikely.
Well, I think I'm here in a couple of weeks. I think it's 50-50. We'll see.
50-50. What do I think? Part of me, I want to defend Liz Truss. I'm trying hard. Part of me wants the country to just rally behind the current leader and try and stabilise things a little bit. I'm not sure, though, whether or not it would happen. Tell me your thoughts on that. Many of you saying, Michelle, there's one man for the job. You say it's Nigel. Well, guess what? Nigel Farage is up next. Nigel Farage. Many of my viewers are calling for you to make a return to the political landscape. Are you up for it?
That's very sweet. Thank you, Michelle. Let me tell you, Liz Truss is not Prime Minister. Jeremy Hunt is President. Yes, he was put in there by his globalist friends. The Hunt reshuffle is on. They've got rid of Leaver and, worst of all, the woman that wanted to leave the ECHR. Braverman's out. In comes Remainer and globalist Grant Shapps. And I genuinely believe there is a Remainer coup underway. That's the debate we're going to have tonight on Farage, beginning in a few minutes. But before that, let's get the all-important weather.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. Tomorrow we switch things around a bit. It should be a brighter day across the west, where we've seen a fair bit of rain today, and we'll see more rain across the eastern areas. Still, it's going to be mild. Tomorrow, though, it won't be as windy as today. The isobars squeezing together. It's been very blustery across North and West Wales. Gusty winds too for Northern Ireland, where we've also seen some very heavy rain, and still further pulses of heavy rain to come tonight across Northern Ireland. May turn drier for a time before more rain spreads north. Same goes for northern parts of Wales. Further rain to come here, and that'll spread into northwest England and parts of southern Scotland by the morning time. Further south, it generally turns dry, but quite misty, quite murky, and very mild. Temperatures staying in double digits across the board. Fairly grey start then to come on Thursday morning. A lot of clouds, some misty conditions as well. Now, it should brighten up for Northern Ireland and Wales and southwest England, so a cheerier day compared to today. But notice further east, there will be outbreaks of rain across southeast England and East Anglia, at times across the Midlands too, and so we'll keep some rain across eastern Scotland. It is going to be another mild day, but it will feel cooler under that rain in the east, but feeling pretty pleasant across Wales and southwest England. The winds won't be as strong during tomorrow either, but staying fairly gusty with more rain to come across parts of Scotland as we head into Friday. And then look at this, the winds pick up and further bands of showers move in, and that's how we go into Friday, with bands of showers working from the southwest up to the northeast. Some bright spells in between, some sunshine, probably not too many showers for eastern England, so a drier day here compared to tomorrow.